medical supplies to our doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers, my administration is leveraging the might of American manufacturing supply chains and innovators across the industry and across every industry. And I just told you about Walmart, and I could tell you about many more. Hanes is making protective gear and masks, and we're making tremendous amounts of product. There's never been anything like it. At the same time, I tell the governors, get it yourself if you can from your local companies and your local warehouses and factories. If you can do that, you should do that. Because of the actions that we've taken under the Defense Production Act, manufacturers and suppliers are sharing with FEMA and HHS their planned orders and allocations to states and to hospitals all over the region. This enables FEMA and HHS to work closely with states, local governments, and private sector to allocate critical resources to highly impacted areas. Working together, we're entirely focused on getting materials to the right place at the right time. So we wanted to go directly to a hospital or directly to a certain state location, and ideally not even hit the state's warehouses. If we can avoid the warehouses, it's even better because they go directly into a hospital. And one example of that is Ohio, the great state of Ohio. Senator Rob Portman called today, and he asked for some help and got us, did a tremendous job, along with Mike DeWine, the great governor of Ohio, to facilitate a donation of 2.2 million gowns. 2.2 million gowns. Think of what that is, 2.2 million. To the Strategic National Stockpile from Ohio-based Cardinal Health. Cardinal Health, we appreciate it, and they're making much more than that and different types of things. We're profoundly grateful for their contribution to protect the lives and safety of our healthcare professionals. Cardinal's been working with us very well. FEMA and HHS formed a historic partnership with the private sector called Project Airbridge to bring supplies from other countries to the United States, including gloves, gowns, goggles, and masks. These supplies will soon be distributed around the country. We have large cargo planes coming in from various parts of the world. Every day, new plane loads are landing in cities such as New York, Miami, Chicago, Los Angeles. Additional flights have been scheduled, and we're adding more and more. And they're actually coming in ahead of schedule. A lot of these flights are coming in with a lot of material ahead of schedule. The amount of usage, the amount of need is something that nobody's ever seen before. We are getting so much, but no matter how much we get, they seem to use it up very quickly. More than 17,000 National Guard personnel have now been activated all across our country. On Tuesday, the Vice President sent a letter to the governors calling on them to have plans in place to use the National Guard to move medical supplies from warehouses to hospitals. So a lot of times we'll deliver supplies to a warehouse in a state, someplace in New York or in New Jersey or in Connecticut or wherever it may be, and they're having difficulty getting it moved. So what we're doing, if we don't bring it directly to the hospital, is we've authorized, it was a special authorization, the National Guard to go into that facility and to move it for the state. So the National Guard is moving a lot of this equipment and medical supplies into a hospital or into an area where it's needed by the state. As I said yesterday, difficult days are ahead for our nation. We're going to have a couple of weeks, starting pretty much now, but especially a few days from now, that are going to be horrific. But even in the most challenging of times, Americans do not despair. We do not give in to fear. We pull together, we persevere, and we overcome, and we win. This week, every American heart is joined with the people of New York as they continue to bear the brunt of the pandemic. To every New Yorker, please know that we are by your side. I love New York. And every day we will be with you. And it could very well be that others take over from New York. There are some areas, some hot spots in other states that are really exploding. Some, like Louisiana, were very late, and then all of a sudden it was like an explosion. In confronting this deadly plague, America is armed with capabilities never dreamed of in past centuries. You look at 1917, the pandemic, it was something, ravaged parts of this country, but ravaged Europe, ravaged. They say 75 to 100 million. Some people say 50 to 75 million. People died. Think of that. And that was a long time ago, over 100 years ago. Many books written about the 1917, 1918 pandemic. Our doctors are poring over the virus genetic code, designing potential therapies and vaccines. Our planes are airlifting supplies from every corner of the earth. We're watching other countries, and they're watching us to see whether or not and who's going to be the first to come up with a cure or a remedy of some kind, or even a help, if it can help. And, of course, a vaccine. We're looking very strongly for a vaccine. Johnson & Johnson is doing well, and other companies are doing very well. But our most powerful asset, our greatest weapon in this effort, is the spirit of our people. And we want to keep away, keep a distance, keep away. If you don't get it, that solves a lot of problems. If you don't get it, and you can't get it if you keep the distance. American spirit is unyielding, unwavering, and unbreakable. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it, the way the people have pulled together, the unity of this country. So together we're going to win this war, and the sooner we do, the sooner we can begin to rebuild, and we're ready to rebound and return to normal lives. We went from the best economy in the history of the world, the best economy that this country has ever seen, the best employment numbers we've ever had, 160 million people working, almost 160 million, to a point where the professionals came to me and they say, "Sir, you're going to have to shut the country down." I said, "What does that mean?" They said, "Sir, you're going to have to shut it down. And we're going to build it up, and I think we're going to build it up fast. I think we're going to have a tremendous rebound. There's a great energy and a great pent-up demand. And as you know, phase 3 was terrific, and phase 4, what passed in Congress, and phase 4, if that happens, will be great. I already proposed paying almost zero interest on bonds, and I proposed a $2 trillion infrastructure plan, which would not only fix our roads and highways and bridges and tunnels and other things, but will also do something very good. It's called jobs. I'm also asking that restaurants and entertainment facilities go back to the old deductibility from corporations, where corporations can buy, because otherwise a lot of these restaurants are going to have a hard time reopening. It takes a long time, and they're going to have a hard time reopening. So we're asking for going back to deductibility, where corporations can buy, and corporations can go out to lunch and they pay and they get a deduction on what they eat. They get a deduction on the bill, and same with the entertainment. It's going to bring a lot of people back. I think it'll open up the restaurant business. People forget that years ago they had that, and when they got rid of it, when they ended it, for whatever reason, but they ended it, many, many restaurants went out of business. Many entertainment-type facilities went out of business, and now's a great time to bring it back. It was a terrible time for that business after they ended it, but this is a great time to bring it back. It'll keep our restaurants going. In fact, I think the restaurant business will be actually bigger and better than it is right now. So we're also talking about that. And now what we'll do is we'll take some questions. And I see Mike is back with some of the folks. That's great, Dr. Fauci. And we will, how are you? Thank you, Deborah. So we'll take some questions, and we make progress day by day, please.
Mr. President, so yesterday you were talking about a friend you had who was in a coma.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear your friend's going through that. But you said this is no flu. There's still some people who kind of think of this as the flu, and over the past month you've compared it to the flu sometimes, saying treat it like the flu, or treat it how we handle the flu. So what changed your thinking on that, or your language on that?
I think the severity. I think also in looking at the way the contagion, it is so contagious. Nobody's ever seen anything like this, where large groups of people all of a sudden, just by being in the presence of somebody, have it. The flu has never been like that, and flu is contagious, but nothing like we've ever seen here. Also, the violence of it. If it hits the right person, and you know what those stats are, if it hits the right person, that person's in deep trouble. And my friend was the right person.
When you heard about that with your friend, like, was that a turning point?
Yeah,
in your
well, not a
thinking?
turning point. No, before that, I knew how, because I'm seeing numbers and I'm seeing statistics that are, not exactly very good. So, but it hit him very hard. He's strong, a very strong kind of a guy, but he's older, he's heavier, and he's sort of central casting for what we're talking about, and it hit him very hard. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, John?
Mr. President, and maybe this question as well for Dr. Birx or Dr. Fauci. Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted last night, and we checked today, that there are still flights that are running between hotspots like New York and Detroit, New Orleans as well. A number of flights were completed today. Senator Graham's point is, if you're going to declare mitigation, should it not be full mitigation, and you stop people from traveling?
Well, we're thinking about doing that. At the same time, we just, to start these airlines and to start this whole thing over again is very tough, John. It's very tough. And you have them going, in some cases, from hotspot to hotspot. If you notice, they're usually hotspot to hotspot. Very few flights, New York to Miami. But we're thinking, we're certainly looking at it. But once you do that, you really are clamping down an industry that is desperately needed.
But how do you make that calculation as to whether or not you keep the industry afloat, or your risks spreading contagion?
That is a calculation that we're looking at right now. We're looking at it very strongly. Please.
So let me follow up to that, Mr. President. Not every governor has issued a stay-at-home order. All of you have made it very clear how important it is to stay home, that we are in a dire situation here. And that's how you stop the spread, is staying home.
Sure.
Why not take the power out of the hands of the governors and you just issue a stay-at-home order for every
Because
state in
states are
this
different.
country?
States are different, and I understand that Governor of Florida, great governor, Ron DeSantis, issued one today, and that's good, that's great. But there are some states that are different. There are some states that don't have much of a problem. There are some, well, they don't have the problem. They don't have thousands of people that are positive, with thousands of people that even think they might have it, or hundreds of people in some cases. So you have to look. You have to look at states. You have to give a little bit of flexibility. I mean, if a state in the Midwest, or if Alaska, as an example, doesn't have a problem, it's awfully tough to say close it down. So we have to have a little bit of flexibility. Look, we're helping governors. We're really here to help governors. They're the front line of attack. And that includes in purchasing, by the way. We're here and we're backing them up. And there's never been a backup like we've given them. We've given them billions of dollars worth of things, medical supplies and ventilators, thousands and thousands of ventilators. We have thousands under construction right now. We have thousands ready to go in case they need it. There's never been anything like this. I mean, they've done really, the people have done incredibly. We're building hospitals all over the country. We're building hospitals right now at a rate that has never even been contemplated before. They're mobile hospitals, but they're really not mobile. I mean, they're incredible structures. But we're building many hospitals, Louisiana, New Jersey, New York. We just finished a massive hospital complex. And we also have medical centers built in New York. I mean, we're building hospitals at the rate that this country has never done before. And hopefully it's all going to work out.
Follow up on detention, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President, I just want to make sure we're clear. On the planes, are you looking at just curtailing routes between certain hotspots, or is it broadly?
Well, we're looking at the whole thing, because we're getting into a position now where we want to do that. We have to do that, and so we're looking at the whole thing. Yes. And we may have some recommendations.
Second question on economics. Just with oil, oil prices are very low.
Yeah.
The Saudis have increased production. I know that you've spoken about liking low oil prices, but then there's also the industry
It's like
aspect.
from 1950, these oil prices.
So,
And that's
what-
when they had big dollars, big, beautiful dollars.
So do you advocate cuts? Do you advocate cuts to production? Do you?
Well, look, we have a great oil industry, and the oil industry is being ravaged. And as you know, Russia, and I spoke to President Putin, we had a great call. Russia, Saudi Arabia, I spoke with the Crown Prince, so we had a great call. But I think that they will work it out over the next few days. If you ask me, I think it's just it's too simple not to be able to. They both know what they have to do. So I think I have confidence in both that they'll be able to work it out. But it has ravaged an industry worldwide, not here. I mean, worldwide, the oil industry has been ravaged. So there was a lot of oil production to start off with, and then on top of it, it got hit with the virus, and business went down 35, 40%. So that business is a tough one. And, you know, they have ships all over the sea. I told you yesterday, all over the sea, massive tankers that they're using for storage. They go out and they just sit there. There's no place to go. They have massive amounts. Now, gasoline is going to be 99 cents a gallon and less. You know that. That's already starting. It's popping up, 99 cents. So that's like giving a massive tax cut to people of our country. When we try and get the going, if fuel is costing much less, it helps with getting the airlines, which is always a tough business, always has been a tough business. But with that being said, look, I want to get that industry back where it was. We were doing records in that industry also. We want to get it back to where it was. So I think that Saudi Arabia, Russia, they're negotiating, they're talking, and I think they'll come up with something. I'm going to meet with the oil companies on Friday. I'm going to meet with independent oil producers also on Friday or Saturday, maybe Sunday. But we're having a lot of meetings on it. I think I know what to do to solve it. But if they're unable to solve it, then I think I know what to do to solve it.
Or can you give us a glimpse?
We
of
won't
what you're
mention
doing?
it now, but it's tough. I think I know what to do to solve it. We don't want to lose our great oil companies. You know, we're the number one producer of oil in the world. And a month ago when you said that, it was great. Today when you say it, it's not so meaningful. But I do believe there's a way that can be solved, or pretty well solved, and I'd rather not do that. I think that Russia and Saudi Arabia at some point are going to make a deal in the not-too-distant future, because it's very bad for Russia. It's very bad for Saudi Arabia. It's very bad. I mean, it's bad for both. So I think they're going to make a deal. You know, the free market is a wonderful thing. It's amazing how it can work. But I think they're going to make a deal. Yeah. Yeah, please, with that.
Mr. President, a couple of questions, one for you, one for Mr. Wolf, if possible. Over 5 million immigrants in this country do pay taxes through their IT numbers, yet they will not receive any money in their stimulus package, and no undocumented immigrant will receive any aid from the government during this crisis. How do you suppose they survive during the COVID-19?
Well, you know, you're saying undocumented, meaning they came in illegally. And a lot of people would say we have a lot of citizens right now that won't be working. So what are you going to do? It's a tough thing. It's a very sad question, I must be honest with you. But they came in illegally. And we have a lot of people that are citizens of our country that won't be able to have jobs. Now, I do think once we get rid of the virus, I think we're going to have a boom economy. I think it's going to go up rather quickly, maybe very quickly, and maybe slowly, but it's going to go up, and it'll all come back. And I think it's actually going to come back stronger than what it was because of the stimulus. But it's a really sad situation, and we are working on it. I will tell you, I'm not going to give you a hard and fast answer because I just want to tell you it's something I think about, and it's something we're working on. Please.
Mr. Wolf?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. President. Question for Dr. Fauci. Looking beyond when we're on the other side of this curve, are we looking at living with some sort of social distancing guidelines essentially until there's treatment or a vaccine? For example, people looking forward to the summer talk about, going to baseball games, going to concerts. We have political conventions over the summer. Are things like that possible or safe without a vaccine or a treatment in place?
Yeah, I think if we get to the part of the curve that Dr. Birx showed yesterday, when it goes down to essentially no new cases, no deaths at a period of time, I think it makes sense that you're going to have to relax social distancing. The one thing we hopefully would have in place, and I believe we will have in place, is a much more robust system to be able to identify someone who's infected, isolate them, and then do contact tracing. Because if you have a really good program of containment that prevents you from ever having to get into mitigation, We're in mitigation right now. That's what the social and physical distancing is. The ultimate solution to a virus that might keep coming back would be a vaccine. In fact, I was on the weekly conference call with the WHO-sponsored group of all the health leaders in the world who are dealing with this. And we all came to the agreement that we may have cycling with another season. We'll be much better prepared. We likely will have interventions. But the ultimate game changer in this will be a vaccine, the same way a vaccine for other diseases that were scourges in the past that now we don't even worry about.
And Tony, how are they doing with the vaccine stuff?
I mean, the vaccine is, as I said, it's on target. We're still in phase 1. There were 3 doses that we had to test. We've been through the first 2 doses. We're on the highest dose now. When we get that data, it'll take a few months to get the data to feel confident to go to the phase 2. And then a few months from now, we'll be in phase 2. And I think we're right on target for the year to a year and a half.
If you don't mind me asking, you and Dr. Birx, have either of you received threats of any kind, or have you been given a security detail, given that you've been out here every day on camera speaking?
Well, I mean, anything that has to do with security detail, I'd have to have you refer that question to the Inspector General of HHS rather than my answer that.
Can I follow up on testing?
He doesn't
Dr.
need
Fauci?
security, everybody loves him.
Can I follow up on testing,
Besides that,
Dr.
they'd be in
Fauci?
big trouble if they ever attack. You know, he was a great basketball player. Did anybody know that? He was a little on the short side for the NBA, but he was talented. He won a game. I read the story. He won a game that was unwinnable against a great team. And his whole team said, we can't beat this team. And he went in and they won the game, right? That was a couple of years ago. But a few years ago. The head never changes. The attitude never changes.
Could I ask Dr. Fauci?
Yes, please.
Because I know he loves being up behind the podium.
He
so
does.
much. Like pulling teeth, like going to the dentist. I don't want to hit you with everything that's coming along, but a lot of people who are watching television today heard from a researcher named Dr. Jacob Granville, who's come up with a potential antibody therapy that he has given to USAMRIID. Just wanted to know if you know anything about this, what you might be able to tell people at home about it who've seen it.
You know, John, I don't know specifically this individual what they're doing, but I can tell you there's a lot of activity that is centered around a passive transfer of antibodies in the form of convalescent plasma, one. The number is to get immune globulin that you precipitate out of the plasma, and another is monoclonal antibody. It's based on the same principle of if you have a protective antibody, passive transfer of that could provide not only protection prophylactically, but also treatment. This is an old concept. In fact, immunology was born decades and decades and decades ago with the concept of giving passive transfer of serum to an individual to protect them from an infection. So I wouldn't be surprised if he and a number of other people are pursuing this. It's the right thing to do.
Can I follow up on antibody testing, please, Dr. Fauci? At what point can we as a country expect there to be a widespread antibody testing so we know exactly what we're dealing with here, as well as other questions such as, when can people who are deemed to be healthy donate blood, for example?
Okay, so when you talk about antibody testing, there are a couple of things that you want to do. You want to find out if someone has been infected and whether or not they're going to ultimately wind up being protected. Antibody testing right now is not the first thing on our priority. It's something that we need to do is testing to see if someone is infected. It is very important ultimately to be able to get a feel for what the penetrance of the infection was in society for a number of reasons. You get a better feel of what the impact has been, but also you get a better feel of what the herd immunity would be. So I can foresee in the future that when we get the facility, which we'll have for sure, I mean, ultimately you can get a test that could do this reasonably easy, and do the kind of what we call serosurveillance study. This is very analogous that Dr. Birx and I were talking about that a lot. And that is back in the day when she and I were both doing the HIV/AIDS issues back when we first discovered the virus in '83 and we had an antibody test in 1985. We found out by serial surveillance representative in different populations that we were dealing with the tip of the iceberg when we saw individuals who were the ones who actually got infected. It gave us a really good feel for how many people were infected, how many are doing well, and how many are getting ill. I foresee that we'll have that same sort of information, which will be important information. But right now, that's not our immediate problem.
Not your priority, but can you give a sense of whether it will happen this year?
Let me just follow up with that, because I think, as I discussed before, I just want to thank all the epidemiologists and scientists out there who worked with us over the last 4 weeks on models. They really, many came forward and really supported us. Right now, we're in talks with a whole series of universities. We have the most brilliant scientists in the world in our universities in state after state. Some of them public health universities, some of them basic science. All of them have received NIH grants for HIV or other development of assays in the past. I've talked to a lot of them over the last few days to really ask them to develop these simple ELISA tests that could be used rapidly in their healthcare centers. Because immediately, it's easy to do. We've all developed ELISAs. So in a day or two after development, they could screen their entire hospital. I think that would be very reassuring to the healthcare workers who have been on the front line. We worry about them every day. And so I've really called on every university and every state to develop ELISAs. You can buy the antigens and the controls online, and really work to test entire healthcare communities in your states and support them that way. At the same time, we worked in sub-Saharan Africa on what we call dried blood spots. So we're looking at, could you use that in a community while we work on the point of care test, where you just dot blood onto this paper, and then that can go into the lab and be analyzed. That would allow us to look in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities immediately. And then finally, we've reached out to the developers of the rapid test, the ones who developed it for malaria, the ones that developed them for HIV. It's exactly the same concept and process, to ask them to rapidly develop these tests, because I think we owe it to the frontline healthcare providers, not only to provide them RNA tests, but many of them have been on the front line now for 4 weeks, may have become exposed. We now know there's asymptomatic. And I think really being able to tell them the peace of mind that would come from knowing you already were infected, you have antibody, you're safe from reinfection 99.9% of the time. And so this, I think, would be very reassuring to our frontline healthcare workers. And our universities can do that by Friday. So I'm putting that challenge out to them to really work on that and do that. That's what we did in the early days. We had ELISAs up and running within days of having the antigen. And so this is what's really possible. So we're not waiting. We're asking for help now.
So potentially this could happen soon, even within this month, if people
It could
take up
happen
that
soon,
challenge?
within this month, if the universities help us, absolutely.
Dr. Burke,
Mr. President, on Florida, Governor DeSantis says that he spoke with you before issuing his
He
stay-at-home
did,
order.
spoke to me this morning.
He has some loopholes in that for.
That I don't know, he spoke to me this morning, he knows what
For
he's
religious
doing.
events, for example,
Very good
large
governor.
religious groups can meet together. Now, that doesn't really agree.
Who can?
Religious groups,
I
like
didn't
churches
speak to
can
him
meet.
about it, but he did speak to me this morning, we talked about it, please.
Full mitigation, sir. Does that go against your model? Because that's not full
I
mitigation.
don't know, I'd have to look at what he did.
Back to the healthcare workers on the front lines, following up with Dr. Birx as well. Hazard pay. You have said you have wanted that for the healthcare workers on the front lines. I know Secretary Mnuchin has mentioned something about that possibly in
I
the
like it.
fourth level of the stimulus
I
package.
like it.
But can you make it happen now? Do we have to wait for a fourth
Well,
stimulus?
I think it's something we're discussing in terms of bonus or bonus pay. It doesn't have to be called hazard pay, it could be called, hey, look, I watch those people go into hospitals that I know. I talked about one of them, right? But I watch them walk into those hospitals, and they walk in men, women, young, middle-aged, not so many older ones. And I watch them, they're almost like, and I think I take the word almost out, they're like warriors. They're going in. People are cheering. Where there's a building across the street, the people are screaming, they're clapping, they're like heroes.
The Empire State
No,
Building.
no, I will
up the
tell you,
top.
I think it's incredible. They're like warriors. They're like soldiers. And we're gonna be doing something for them. So whether it's bonus, because, you know, we're hopefully gonna be over this relatively quickly. It's gonna be vicious for a period of time. But hopefully we're gonna be over this. You have a lot of questions today. Look at you.
There's
You
a
know
lot-
this young lady behind you?
Never met her before in my life.
We're practicing social distancing.
good. That's a good
Makes
idea.
our marriage strong.
It's good for a marriage, right?
There are a lot of people who are worried about getting sick, and do they end up in a hospital, people who are uninsured, and will they be crushed by medical bills? You were considering last month already, in March, reopening the healthcare.gov exchanges. There has been a determination not to do that. Could you tell us what the rationale was behind that
Okay, you
decision,
might-
and what
Yeah.
would you have as an alternative?
Okay, they took that up under the task force, and maybe, Mike, you want to say a few words about that?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And what I can tell you is that the President has made a priority from the outset of our task force work, make sure every American knows that they can have a coronavirus and they don't have to worry about the cost. And we were very inspired as well because of the President's engagement with the leading health insurance companies in the country, that now, so far, 2 of the top health insurance companies in America have announced that they're not only willing to waive copays on testing, and now testing is fully covered because of the bill the President signed for every American, but also that these 2 insurance companies have waived copays on all coronavirus treatment. And I can assure you that as Congress and the President and the administration begin to discuss the next piece of legislation, we're going to make sure that Americans have those costs compensated and covered. Our priority right now is ensuring that every American takes the 30 days to slow the spread to heart. The best thing we can do for one another, for our family's health, for the most vulnerable among us, is practice those mitigation strategies that the President outlined yesterday for the next 30 days. We're dealing with testing to make sure that every American can have a test that needs one. We're dealing with supplies, and we're making great progress in building personal protective equipment and ensuring that ventilators are available, particularly for the communities most impacted. But the American people can be confident that as we move into this, we're going to make sure that our healthcare workers are properly compensated for their extraordinary and courageous work. And we'll make sure that the financial burden on those who end up contracting the coronavirus and dealing with its most serious symptoms also can deal with those issues and deal with those costs.
Understood, Mr. Vice President, but there will be people who don't have insurance who get sick before any of these mitigation efforts are put into place. And without opening the healthcare exchanges, where can they find insurance? People who aren't insured by these companies that are covering the cost of the copay, where can people go now to get health insurance if they get sick, before they get sick?
Well, all across America, we have Medicaid for underprivileged Americans. And at the President's direction, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services has given unprecedented waivers for states to expand coverage for coronavirus testing and treatment. We've also extended waivers for Medicare administration to make sure that people have access to that coverage. But we're going to continue to bring opportunities to the President. The traditional systems of Medicaid, in particular, for the uninsured in America.
Could you expand that to cover middle-class people?
Well, I think what we're seeing health insurance companies do today, John, is really inspiring. I mean, one of the
Vice
things
President, I'm sorry to
one of the
belabor
things
a
that's
point, but that's for
characterized
people
the
who-
President's approach here.
That's for people who already have insurance.
Well, one of the things that has animated and characterized the President's approach is the way he's engaged American businesses to step up and do their part. And as the President said many times, we're inspired by the spirit of American businesses. I was at a distribution center for Walmart today in Southern Virginia, and I saw the way this company that literally has already hired thousands of people, these workers are coming to work, the truck drivers are coming to work, farmers are working in the field. Grocery stores made a commitment to the President a month ago that no grocery store in America would close down. The food supply is strong. We're getting food on the table of every American. But it's because the President went to these leaders and said, we need you to step up and do your part. We engaged health insurance executives early on in this process to waive copays on coronavirus testing. And because of the engagement, and frankly, because of that that patriotic and compassionate spirit that's being reflected. We've already seen two of the largest insurance companies in the country announce that they're going to be providing full coverage, free of charge for coronavirus treatment. I fully expect, I think as the President does too, that we'll see more of that for people that have insurance. We'll continue to provide flexibility for Medicaid for people that don't have insurance. We'll make sure that Medicare has the flexibility to meet this moment. For seniors, when we remember that seniors with underlying health conditions are the most vulnerable to serious outcomes from the coronavirus, but we'll get through this using the full weight of the federal government and the full strength of the American economy.
John, I think it's a very fair question, though, and it's something we're really going to look at because it doesn't seem fair. If you have it, you have a big advantage, and at a certain income level you do. I think it's one of the greatest answers I've ever heard, because Mike was able to speak for 5 minutes and not even touch your question. No, I said that's what you call a great professional. But let me just tell you, you really are. It's really a fair question, and it's something we're looking at.
Well, I think I mean, just in terms of a fair question, I always endeavor to ask fair questions, but this is a huge worry
Yeah, I know.
for people in this country who are in that donut hole. They don't have commercial insurance. They don't qualify for Medicaid.
Right.
What do
They're
they
a certain
do?
group, and it's a pretty big group. We're looking at
I
it.
mean, we spent the entire 2000 election talking about the donut hole, and it's still there.
Yeah, we are. I haven't been up there yet, though. You know, the other people have been talking about it.
No, I mean,
And they haven't
2000
spoken it.
This was 20 years ago we were talking about it.
But they're
Gore
talking
v.
about it,
Bush,
they're
was all
talking about it.
the donut hole.
I know, but they're talking about it in the 2020 election too, and nobody's gotten to it. Nobody's talked about it at all.
Mr. President?
I think we will, yeah, I think we're going to get to it. I think we're going to get to it. I don't think the other group will get to it. They haven't even spoken about it. And it's a big group of people.
Are you committing that there's
No, I'm not
something you're
committing,
gonna
but it's
do- or
something
for
we're
the
going to look at.
uninsured
I can't
for-
commit. I have to get approval from it. I have a thing called Congress, but it's something we're going to look at, and we have been looking at it.
In
Go
the,
ahead.
you mentioned in this congressional bill, the sort of phase 4, you would like to see something.
If there is a
good
phase
there.
4, but we're certainly looking at certain things. We want to help restaurants, entertainment. We want to help, because it's jobs, not that restaurants, it's jobs, tremendous amounts of jobs. So we're looking at that. We're looking at infrastructure. I mean, think of it. We will have spent $8 trillion, and, you know, it's way back, we're way pulled back, but we will have spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, and yet our roads are in bad shape, our bridges, our tunnels, bad shape, and we're going to be the talk of the world again soon. But we want $2 trillion. We will have spent in the Middle East, and all we got out of it was death and cost. But all we got out of it was death. Millions of people. You have to look at the other side, too. Millions and millions of people killed. Our great soldiers, thousands killed, so many wounded, hurt. And yet when we want to go and fix a road someplace, we want to do what we want to do in our country. No, it's time that we spend money on our country. That's what we're going to do. It's time that we start spending on our roads and our bridges and our schools and all of the things that we're supposed to be spending on. And people are finally getting used to it. And you could look at all of what we've done in the Middle East, way back in so many different places, way back in other countries too, by the way. And I've gone to other countries that are very rich. I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to reimburse us for our costs. They don't even know what I'm talking about. It takes them 20 minutes to figure it out because nobody's ever asked them to do that. And they're doing it. They're doing it. And they have no choice. They have to do it. So it's time that we start spending on the USA. Okay, please.
Mr. President, this is a question for the Vice President. On March 9th, you said 1 million tests had been delivered and another 4 million would be delivered by the end of the week. That clearly did not happen. What happened with those projections? What went wrong?
Well, I think the test kits were delivered, according to HHS, but the difference is between receiving a test and the ability to rapidly produce a result of that test. And frankly, because of the public-private partnership that the President initiated now more than a month ago with our massive commercial laboratories across the country, our team was reported today that we're now doing more than 100,000 tests a day. More than 1.2 million tests have been performed. States have established drive-through sites all across the country. In fact, states have been so successful with the community-based and drive-through testing that we're working to transition over completely all of the federal work on drive-through testing and have the states completely manage that process.
So you're saying 4 million tests were delivered by the end of that week?
HHS was very busy from early in the year delivering test kits around the country. But the difference was, as the president said many times, we had an antiquated system where a state laboratory or CDC only had the capacity to process 40 to 60 tests a day. Now with the commercial labs, literally those labs are processing tens of thousands of tests every day. And so while we're continuing to distribute test kits around the country, now because of the partnership with companies like Roche and Quest and LabCorp, the American people are seeing the results of those tests more rapidly than at any point in the past, and we expect that will continue to expand. But the exciting news this weekend about Abbott Laboratories having a 15-minute test approved is going to put us in a position, we believe, down the road to get to where Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx want us to be for many of the states that don't yet have significant outbreak. There's some 19 states where we don't have significant outbreak, but we want to be doing the kind of surveillance testing in those states that will allow us to, early on, to identify people with the coronavirus, do what the experts call contact tracing, and ensure that in that state we don't have an outbreak of the coronavirus. So,
In many countries all over the world want to know whether or not they can use, especially our new test that was just developed by Abbott, which is almost instantaneous, which is going to be great. And remember this, we inherited bad tests. We really inherited bad tests. These are horrible tests. And it was broken. It was all broken. And we fixed it. And we're doing millions of tests. Sometimes we send out a test and it's not used. In many cases, it wasn't used. But we've worked with the states, and the testing has been pretty amazing, especially considering the fact that we inherited a very broken system. Jeff?
Mr. President, just to follow up on something you said before, are you considering a temporary ban on all domestic flights?
I am looking at hotspots. I am looking where flights are going into hotspots. Some of those flights I didn't like from the beginning, but closing up every single flight on every single airline, that's a very, very, very rough decision. But we are thinking about hotspots where you go from spot to spot, both hot, and we'll let you know fairly soon.
And what about rail travel?
A similar thing. We have trains going back and forth, and people don't think of trains, but we do a lot of transportation business. It's a very big decision to do that. And we're pretty late in the process from the standpoint that this is starting. You're going to start seeing, I think, over the next couple of weeks, you're going to start to see us hit a top and start coming down. So we'll make those decisions. Those are very, very big decisions from the standpoint of the future of our country, in a way, in the future of our country. We have to get our country back. We have to start moving again. We have to start working again. They're doing tests on airlines, very strong tests for getting on, getting off. They're doing tests on trains, getting on, getting off. But when you start closing up entire transportation systems and then opening them up, that's a very tough thing to do.
There continues to be a lot of public confusion about the use of masks. What is the
The
White
reuse. I love the sterilization of the masks. So, Ohio company, you can sterilize the N95. You can sterilize that mask for up to 20 times. Think of that, up to 20 times. We're throwing them out, and they're very expensive masks. They're throwing them out, and I kept saying, one of the first questions I asked to Dr. Fauci, I said, "Why aren't they sterilizing or cleaning the mask?" Because I didn't, was it my thing exactly when we first heard about this? Nobody else knew it either. And now we have a company, and I guess a number of companies, one in Ohio, a great one, that makes equipment where you can sterilize a mask up to 20 times, which is fantastic.
What
Okay.
about you or me? What about the public? Should we be wearing masks out? We've heard lots of different recommendations.
I don't believe, look, there's a big thing, a lot of people don't like it. Some people don't like it because you're taking it away from the medical professionals. Some people don't like it for other reasons. I don't see where it hurts, And it doesn't have to be a mask. It can be a scarf. Scarf is highly recommended by the professionals. I don't see where it hurts. I think, frankly, if people wanted to do it, we don't want to do anything that's going to take masks. You're talking about a tremendous amount of masks when you do that. We don't want to take them away from our medical professionals, but I certainly don't see it hurting. But what I do see people doing now is using scarves. And I think in a certain way, depending on the fabric, I think in a certain way a scarf is better. It's actually better.
Mr. President.
Yeah, please, you didn't get, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about social distancing and how it applies to religious organizations.
Yeah.
Some churches, as you know, have continued to hold services, even though you have advised people that they need to practice social distancing. There was a pastor of a mega church in Florida over the weekend who held services that were attended by several hundred people. So my question to you is, should pastors be holding services in the middle of this pandemic? And even if they do, should Americans be going to church?
Well, my biggest disappointment is that churches can't meet in a time of need. You know, this is really a great time for churches to be together, for people to get together on a Sunday or whenever, any day, and meet. And yet, if you do that, if you do it close, you're really giving this invisible enemy a very big advantage. So it's the biggest, I think the single biggest disappointment is you can't, one of the reasons I said, wouldn't it be great just to pick a date as, you know, I called it aspirational, an aspirational date would be Easter. And I will tell you, it's very, very disappointing. But again, you get too close, and if somebody's sick, you're going to probably catch it. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah, just real quickly, Joe Biden's campaign came out with a statement today saying that Biden would be
Did he write the statement, or did some PR person write
As
it?
far as I know, the campaign was wide awake, sir, and they sent out a
Good.
statement that
For
Joe
change.
Biden would be open to having a phone call with you to talk about the coronavirus
That's
pandemic.
okay, sure.
Would you take his call? Would
Oh,
you?
absolutely. I'd
You
love
would talk to him
I'd
about
love to
it.
speak to him, sure. He should be
Work
able to.
together.
I always found him to be a nice guy. I don't know him very well, frankly, but I think he's probably a nice guy. No, if he'd like to call, I'd absolutely take his call. Okay? You could tell him. All right?
But you have talked about the failings of the Obama administration in leaving you with empty shelves and no plans.
Well,
They have
and
said
no
you got-
ammunition,
They have
and
said you
maybe
got
no
rid of the
ammunition.
pandemic office and the National Security Council.
We didn't do that. That turned out to be a false story. Now you're starting to go, what, are you working for CNN?
I'm pointing out what they have said and what you have said.
Good, you were
That's
with
all.
Fox. But Fox isn't so easy either. Don't kid yourself.
President, this is not
Hey, look, John, let me
not
tell you
about Fox
something.
or CNN.
You know
This
that's
is
a
just about
false
statement.
story. What you just said is a false story. This doctor knows it better than anybody. No, but you shouldn't be repeating a story that you know is false. All right, who's next? Please, go ahead, from the back. You didn't get it.
Talk about Iran, and Iran is struggling with the virus.
It's very
and
sad what's happening in
a
Iran.
broken economy. Under which conditions would you consider suspending, saying, U.S. sanctions?
Well, look, we have to talk to them. I think we could work out a deal with Iran very quickly. All they have to do is call. I just think that, you know, they're proud people, and the leadership is proud. They're proud, like all of us. We're proud. You people are proud. They're having a hard time picking up the phone, or they're having a hard time setting up the meeting. But they could fix their country pretty easily. And we don't want hostility. But if they are hostile to us, they're going to regret it like they've never regretted anything before, as per today's statement. But all they have to do is call or have somebody call. You know, there are channels where we can deal very easily. Again, I think that John Kerry did a tremendous disservice. I think he violated the Logan Act 100%. That's what I think. And I think it made it tough for them because they were dealing with him for years. It was a terrible deal. All of that money, $150 billion plus cash, plane loads of cash for a deal that was no good and was short term. Essentially, it was a short term deal. Who makes a deal for that kind of money? And $1.8 billion in cash. I don't even know what that would look like. That would be, this room would have to be filled up 5 times with $100 bills, okay? Who makes a deal like this? And then on top of it, the deal's no good. All right, how about 1 or 2 more?
Mr. President, Seattle police have reported a surge in calls about domestic violence. A number of groups have raised concerns.
About Mexican violence?
Domestic violence. A number of groups have raised concerns that the longer people are stuck at home, the more domestic violence cases there are going to be. Do you share those concerns, and what is being done
Well,
to
it
make
could
sure?
be. It's another cost of not getting our country working. I mean, now some people are getting along great. I've also had the exact opposite question. Families are coming together. They're actually coming together. They haven't talked for a long time, and now all of a sudden they're talking again. They're loving each other. So I've heard that too. But I also have heard domestic violence much, at a higher level. And drug use because of, in this case, they'd lose their jobs. They had a great job. They had a great life. They have a great family. All of a sudden, a husband's told that he doesn't have a job anymore and he's got no money. And that brings drugs into it. That brings suicide into it. It's a terrible thing. We have to get our country going again. We did the right thing. We had no choice. We did the right thing. Other countries tried to use the herd or the herd mentality. It's just, something that doesn't work. If you look at, just to say, I heard Sweden gave it a shot and they saw things that were really frightening and they went immediately to shutting down the country. We did the right thing and we did it early. And we stopped other people from coming into our country early. But no, that's a cost. I've been talking about that. People say, what are you talking about? But you'll have that. You'll have domestic violence. You'll have violence. You'll have suicide. You'll have drug addiction. A lot of people are going to be lost. We want to get this open as soon as we can. I'll be the happiest person. So will you, everyone in this room. Happy when we get the word that this is the time and we have our common sense and they'll give me a decision or they'll be making certain statements and I think I'll know how to interpret those statements very well. I'll be with Mike. I'll be with the task force. I'll be with a lot of very talented people, including the two people on stage with us. But I look forward. That'll be a great day. All right. How about one more, please?
Can I ask a question of Mr. Wolf? Can I ask a question for
Sure.
Secretary Wolf?
Check.
What is the current contingency plan in ICE detention centers where cases of COVID-19 are already popping up? Some people have been released. Is there a contingency plan, and would you release the most vulnerable people like children and the elder?
Well, ICE looks at, on a case-by-case basis, even well before COVID, on looking at certain detention facilities and determining on a case-by-case basis if they do need to release individuals. And when we do that, we often put them on alternatives to detention as well. In the case of COVID, we're looking at vulnerable populations, and again, ICE is doing that in conjunction with CDC and other medical professionals. And in some cases, we do need to do that for the health and safety and the well-being of those detainees. But again, that's a case-by-case basis. We're not going to make any blanket statement that we're going to release individuals of whole groups at a time. So it's really important, and I've said it twice now, it's really a case-by-case basis, determining the health of that particular population or detainee, the facility they're in. Different facilities have different capabilities, whether it's an ICE-owned facility or it's a contractor-owned facility. And so we're certainly doing that. We're doing that today. We've been doing that for the past several weeks.
Did you say how many have been released?
While you're up, could you talk about how tight that southern border is right now?
Absolutely. We continue to build miles of the wall every day. We're up to over 150, I believe. We're continuing to build new miles of wall. And a lot of folks ask about replacement wall or new miles. And it's a new capability on our southwest border that we haven't had before. And so whether you talk to the agents, the Border Patrol agents, they like that capability, they like that impedance and denial that it provides them. And it provides the ability for those agents to focus elsewhere on parts of the border that are very difficult to patrol, so we can use our resources in a different way. And so we see a lot of benefits from the border wall system. And again, that includes not only the physical infrastructure, but the cameras, the roads, the lightings, the fiber optic cables. And we're looking forward, and we're still well on our track, well on our mark to meet 450 miles by the end of the calendar year.
What actions are you taking
Mr. Wolf, can I get one more question from you while you're here? There's been concern among farmers about being able to get enough migrant labor to keep the food supply moving as we go into the harvest season. What are you doing to address that?
Well, at the direction of the Vice President and the task force, we are looking at a number of different options with the H-2A workers that you mentioned on how do we either extend the validity of their visa, or looking at a couple of different options. Nothing to announce here today, but again, at the direction of the President and the Vice President, we're looking at a variety of different options that I think we will have soon, and it'll be very beneficial.
What about waiving
But I
visa
am glad
restrictions
you
for
asked that
food?
question, because we want the farmers, they've had this for years. We want the farmers to be able to get the people that have been working those farms for years, or we're not going to have farms. So they're going to come in, and they're going to be given a certain pass, and we're going to check them very, very closely, especially over the next month. Because remember, after a month or so, I think once this passes, we're not going to have to be, hopefully, worried too much about the virus. But we want them to come in. We're not closing the border so that we can't get any of those people to come in. They've been there for years and years, and I've given the commitment to the farmers they're going to continue to come, or we're not going to have any farmers. Okay? Yeah, one more question. Who are you with, by the way?
I'm with Voice of America, so
Why?
what about waiving visa restrictions
Amazing.
on immigrant
Okay,
doctors?
who else, please?
In less than 24 hours, sir, 2 ships will arrive at Port Everglades with people who are infected.
We're looking at the 2 ships, yeah.
Should
We
they
have,
let
we have Canada notified, a lot of Canadians, a lot of British on the ship, and they're coming to take the people that are on the ship back to their homeland. Canada's coming, UK is coming, and we have a lot of, and we have Americans. We have some people that are quite sick, and we're taking care of that. I'm speaking with the governor about that a lot, and it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation. You know, you can understand. You have people that are sick on those ships, and states don't want to take. They have enough problems right now. They don't want to take them. But we have to, from a humane standpoint. We don't have a choice. It's like, I don't want to do that, but we have to. People are dying.
So they will be led into the country.
We're going to do something. We're going to do something. At a minimum, we're sending medical teams on board the ships. We're taking the Canadians off and giving them to Canadian authorities. They're going to bring them back home. The same thing with the UK. But we have to help the people. They're in big trouble, no matter where they're from. Happen to be Americans, largely Americans. But whether they were or not, I mean, they're dying. So we have to do something. And the governor knows that, too.
Before being sent on?
Well, we're sending a lot of them home. Yeah, we're sending a lot of them home to their countries. But we'll be doing something, and we'll be announcing it. You'll see what we're doing. But we're also putting medical staff onto the ships so that we can, we have to take care of the people.
Mr. President.
At the risk of getting chewed out again?
No, you won't get chewed out. You know.
Mr. President, the IRS is requiring people who don't normally file income tax to file a simple income tax return in order to get their $1,200 check. Is that the way it's going to be, or is there something you can do to?
I had heard that. Now, I don't know. Do you know that answer, Mike?
IRS issued some guidance.
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
It's
I mean,
not in the
we'll
bill, but
we
it's
can get back.
IRS.
Yeah, it's a process that they're working on. We'll get back to you as soon as we find out. All right, one more, please.
Mr. President, you spoke with President Bolsonaro of Brazil today.
I did.
At
I spoke
least
to him.
according
Yes.
to his Twitter.
He's great. He's a great guy, and he's doing a wonderful job.
Still
From
meeting
Brazil.
with his
Spoke to him this
supporters,
morning.
talking to them. So what
And
is your
just a
assessment?
very complimentary call. He's working very hard. He's got a problem with the virus, got a big problem, and we talked about it today at length. We had a call this morning, and Brazil is shut down, as you know. They weren't going to shut it down, but they had to. So Brazil is shut down. The world is shut down. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. The entire world is shut down. You go from having the most powerful economy in the world and from other countries that are doing well to being everything is shut down. It's very sad, but we're going to get it going, and we're going to be stronger than ever. I really believe that. We're going to be stronger. We're going to have a big bounce, a very big bounce when this is gone. And I just want to thank the American people. I want to thank these great professionals, and I want to thank the media, because really, for the most part, the media has been very fair. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.